Welcome to the first in our new series for this radio here. This is a Turnigy TGY-i10 radio, and this is one that we've been asked to take a look at by a number of subscribers. So we're going to, in this first video, do an unboxing, show you what comes in here, do a very quick view of things like the ergonomics and all the switches and what's not. Then we'll look at the considerations and things that you have to be aware of. We'll also have a quick look at the modes that come out of the box. So this is as supplied from HobbyKing. I'll put a link in the description to HobbyKing, and I do need to say a very big thank you to those guys for shipping this to us to play with today. In the following videos, we're going to spend a bit more time deep diving in stuff like setting up for helicopters, planes, quadcopters. We'll look at things like telemetry setup and other pieces too. But for now, what we're really going to try and do is do a kind of a review, really, of the radio and what you get with it. So if you're looking to buy this, you've got an idea of what's going to come. So first of all, we'll have to take it out of the box. So apologies, we're kind of zoomed right the way out. So as you take the top off the box, then you get the manual. The manual itself isn't bad. It's one of those where each section is written in Chinese and English. The English is okay, but it's one of those things that it doesn't always tell you what you need to know. It tells you what the technical guys who wrote it wanted to tell you. Then we have a bag of bits. We'll come back to that later. That's got a number of things in here, including telemetry sensors and also a trainer cable, which is great. Then we have a protective cover. Then we have the radio itself. And we're going to come back and take a much more detailed look at that in a second. And then on the bottom layer, we have the receiver that you get with the kit as well, which is a TGY-i10 receiver. And then we also get another USB cable. In here is normally the battery, but we've obviously popped that in the radio for speed here. The radio itself, if we talk about a few of the ergonomic features, let me just zoom in a little bit before I power it up, and I'll take you through some of the settings. So this is a 10-channel radio. I'll just put the information on the screen at the moment from the HobbyKing website. You can see it's a 10-channel radio. It actually set up, it says on the HobbyKing website, for helicopter, airplane and glider. However, very nice to see when I've powered this on and been playing with it, all the bits and pieces for multi-rotors is here by default as well. It has an SD card in here, memory capacity for 20 models, and it also comes with lots of extra bits. Now, those extra bits, let me just show you what comes in this other packet, because this is quite cool. That does also feature telemetry. So as well as the cable for the trainer port, we have a load of these little telemetry sensors. So we have things like thermometer sensor, we have a voltage sensor, we have things like an RPM sensor, we have something called an iBus receiver. Now we'll look at this in one of the later videos, but this allows you to add an awful lot more channels from the 10 that you get on the standard receiver. So if you have a really big plane with lots of servos that have been run in tandem for large control surfaces, then you can have up to 4 of these connected together to kind of extend that out over the plane, which is a really nice idea. I love the fact that you get all of this in the packet. It does mean that it's easy to play with and mess around with telemetry. On the side of the receiver itself, there are ports where you plug the telemetry into. Now these receivers are pretty cheap and cheerful too. They're only about £14, just a little bit more, if you want to get more of them. So we'll play with all of this later in the series and we'll get it all working. But for now, what we'll do is we'll focus on the radio and those key features. To power it on, you press and hold these 2 power buttons together, and then depending on what model you have selected, depends on the sound you get. And we'll look at that later. So press and hold power. It'll warn us that some of our switches are not in the safe position, which is great. So I just need to make sure they are. We have the sound of a jet plane, and then we're in business. Now this is a touch screen, so you can navigate and set everything up, and I'll zoom in a second because the contrast isn't being helped very much. It's nice and bright, and you can get a sunshade. I've also actually 3D printed a sunshade for it. So let me just pop that on there, that might make it slightly easier to see. And that's very good in bright light. It just means that occasionally in direct sunlight you might just have to kind of tilt the radio to you so that the display's in shadow. The thing is covered in switches. So to give you a quick whistle stop tour, we obviously have our 4 main controls. The gimbals are really nice on this. They're really light and very, very smooth, and the spring loading isn't ridiculous. I really like it because it allows me, it's just hard enough for me to keep the throttle in position while I'm playing with the rudder, because I have a bit of a tendency when I'm banging the sticks around flying something like a quadcopter to move the throttle as I'm moving the rudder. We have the trims down here, very similar to other radios that we've looked at from HobbyKing, like the i8. Ergonomically, I'm used to them having them here, but after a little while you do get used to the trims for the elevator being kind of down here when you're using them. The others are kind of where you'd expect them to be. We have a couple of sliders, so one on each shoulder. We have loads of switches. We have a couple of 3 positions which are on these 2 pieces here. So those the rest are kind of 2 positions, with the exception of this one here. It's a momentary switch. So if you wanted that for lights or a bomb release or something, that will be useful. And then we have these 3 rotating switches in the middle as well. Now you can assign those to any of the 10 channels and set it up however you want. It is quite slim. It's a lot thinner than a lot of other radios I've played with, and I'm used to having slightly bigger grips behind my hands, but in practice it very quickly starts to feel very natural, and the way your hands kind of curl around the back is great. On the back itself, we have a trainer port and a port for the USB, and then we actually have the slot where the battery goes in, and there it is, it's actually installed there. Very easy to swap and change out. You can get spares, and it might be worthwhile if you're playing with a radio and you're going to be out all day to get a separate battery, because one battery fully charged will get you through a day's flying, but it'll be starting to get a little bit low towards the end. As we've said, the display is touchscreen. It also includes a stylus that you can pull out, that you can use to actually set things up and to change the trims and all those things here, and that's very, very nice. You can also do it with your fingertip. For the iPhone generation, and I'd like to think that I'm of that, although I'm a bit old really for it, you can actually use your fingertip to use everything. And I prefer the fingertip, to be honest, than the stylus, although in those cases and for those people where using things like an iPhone is tricky, maybe because of the way their fingertips are, then you have that ability to use the stylus in the back as well. It does have a trainer port on the back, so that cable can be used, so we can set it up with trainer and other bits and pieces. Just a couple of considerations that I would point out. First of all is that the operating system is something that you're downloading and installing from HobbyKing. It's not OpenTX, it's not any of the others. There are radios that look similar to this, but they're using a slightly different operating system. Second thing, because of the slimness, there's no room in here for another module. So if you wanted to add something that would bind it to DSM receivers or those kind of things, that isn't available in here like some of the other radios kind of in this class. However, this is 120 quid for all the stuff on the table, which, considering you're getting the receiver, the radio, the capabilities of the radio, and all the telemetry bits and bobs as well, is pretty good value for money. So let's zoom in a little bit and let me give you a little bit more of a view of what this screen is like. So we're zoomed in a lot closer now, and I've just put this in a little bit of shade so my camera can pick the screen up. Unfortunately, the way the camera exposes doesn't always do screens like this. The justice, it's actually clearer in real life. I am going to use the stylus just to keep my big stubby fingers out of the way as I kind of give you a quick tour. So the way this works is that pressing any of the icons at the bottom kind of gives you what's going on. We have the questions where you can actually plug it and it'll give you all of the details and help. We have then the timer resets, and then the middle one is the one that we can actually use to get into the menus. So we press that, and then the menus have all of the settings here. So we have it defaulted for a plane right now, and you can see that we have things like trims, exponential, reverse. We can change the endpoints, do things with sub trims. We can have standard mixes are already set here that we can then use. aileron to rudder, rudder to aileron. We can change things like throttle curves. If we then go on to the next page, we can delay functions, and we can do all kinds of really cute stuff, including things like change the airplane structure. So at the moment, the default is that channel 1 will be our ailerons, channel 3 will be the throttle or ESC, channel 2 will be the elevator, channel 4 will be the rudder. I do like this screen. It does mean that it's very easy to wire up the receiver when you get to that point. However, to change the kind of craft that you have, if we click on modify, then what we can do is start unselecting the things that we want. So say we had something like a flying wing, then all we've really got are 2 ailerons. If I go back now, then we can see that I'm going to plug the left aileron into channel 1, the right aileron into channel 5. So it's very simple and easy to set everything up. Obviously at the moment there's no motor on there. Let's modify that and give it an engine. There we go. Channel 3 will now be our engine. So it's very simple to do that. Remember, this is the default firmware that it's come with direct from HobbyKing. The other thing that we can kind of do as well as all this is we can change the model type. So at the moment we can change the model type that we're in to either be an airplane or glider, a helicopter or a multirotor. So as you've seen, we've kind of been going through airplane and glider. If we click on heli and ask us are we sure, click yes, then we can say it's a variable pitch heli, it's what kind of swash plate do we have, and this is where a screen like this really comes into its own, because it actually is graphically showing us what's going on. So we'll have a standard 120 degree one like we have on the T-Rex 450s and 500s, and we'll go back. Fantastic. So now we can actually have that set up as well. If we again, so a couple of things in here going to the top. So again, we have lots of the same settings that we had. We can see the swash mixes. We can change all these. The way you change these, you click on the one you're interested in changing, and then you have this kind of slider at the bottom, like a rotating control that you'd have on a traditional radio. If you're not happy, you can just reset it. And again, you have all of these other things that you can set for the helicopter. And then the last thing we can do is we can then also change it to be something for a multirotor. So if we go all the way along, back into models, we'll change this model type to be a multicopter. Come back out. And now we're set to multicopter, and it will auto configure the basic bits and pieces. So if I go into, you see with the multicopter you get an awful lot less to play with, because in theory all of that stuff is being done in your flight controller, but you can do logic switches, set your gimbal up and set your auxiliary channels as well. So if I click on auxiliary channels, we can decide which one we want. We can give it a name, so I don't know, we can call it modes, and then we can decide the control that we want. We want a 3-position switch, so I might want that one there, which is switch A. There we are, we're done. So if I now click on display servos, you can see our throttle moving beautifully. You can see the rudder. So rudder's channel 4, throttle's channel 3, aileron's channel 1, elevator is channel 2. We can see the mode switch that we've just set up is now on channel 5. And it's very easy then, it's automatically also set up some of these others for things like gimbal, so we can go and configure those as well. And we'll go into that in one of the later videos in the series. But hopefully that's give you an idea of the kind of things that you've got in here. So we've got things like telemetry, logic functions, exponential, dual rate, standard mixes, auxiliary channel setups, we've got channel delays, timers, we've got curves. So everything that you'd use as a standard modeler is kind of in here. So in summary, stay tuned for the rest of the series. We'll be going through some of these and going through the setup of each of the main model types, so also doing some tips and tricks, and also then goofing around with the telemetry too. So I like this radio. I use a Taranis, and that in terms of the capabilities, can do a little bit more, but it's not as easy sometimes to program as this. So if you are looking for a radio that's relatively easy to program, where everything is nice and graphical, then this is definitely worth looking at. Just to finish off, just to show that the sounds change, we heard the airplane noise last time, and that airplane noise was because it was set to one of the airplane models. Now we're on Multirotor. This is what it does when you turn it off. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video. There are lots of other videos on the channel and they're carefully ordered into playlists, so you may find that there are other videos on this same subject that you can go and watch. So I would recommend going into the playlist area of Painless360 YouTube channel and looking around and seeing what there is. You never know what you might find. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and happy flying.